Chapter 11. Are you still friends with any of your classmates from grade school? I can say that I am still friends with all my grade school classmates, many of those that I have been in contact with through the years. Living in my hometown all these years means that I can still be in touch with those other classmates that have stayed nearby also. And there is another item that helps me to stay in touch, and that is Facebook. I love it for that reason. Some of my classmates are my cousins, and some of them are still around Danville. I'm referring to the Treadway family who lived just 2 blocks away from my childhood home. Chuck and Richard are still living close by, and I see them from time to time. Chuck and his wife Joyce came to see my band playing downtown. The sad thing is that more often than I care to talk about is I see them when we attend a funeral. At least that will get us together. A year ago we lost my cousin Donnie Treadway, who was my age, and we had spent a lot of time together as kids. Linda Hancock lived just across the street and was also an only child. Although she was a little older, we always enjoyed each other's company. She is still in Danville, but has lost her husband to illness several years ago. I've been to visit with her a few times in the last several years. She calls me her little brother. It's always a great visit to sit and talk about the old days. Next door to our house was the Edwards family. Mary Ellen was my age, so we went through school in the same grades. She lives in Missouri now and is a minister. She keeps in touch through Facebook. Next to her house was my closest buddy, Gary Smith. He was in a grade behind me, but we spent lots of time together at each other's house and around the neighborhood. His mother is still living, and I went to her 90th birthday party last year. Gary and I keep in touch by Facebook. He lives just south of town, next to the house that our company Village Builders built for his son's family. Then there's Mike Klein. He lived just around the corner and was 2 years ahead of me. He lives in Texas now, but like the others, we keep in touch by Facebook. His yard was large enough there on the corner that the entire neighborhood played football and basketball there in the summer. I remember that he bought the set of weights that my dad had. My dad bought them new and used them for a while, but they quickly started collecting dust. Mike really put them to good use and became a real bodybuilder. Even today he looks like Mr. America. Then there is Donna Moulton. She lived 4 doors down the street. She didn't go to my school because the school district dividing line was 3 doors down. Even then we grew up as close friends. Again, we stay in touch with FB, though she moved recently to Virginia. By the way, she too was an only child. The Hendricksons lived across the street from my Treadway cousins. John was in my class and Russell was a year ahead. They both lived just across the state line in Indiana. I have visited with Russ several times in the last few years. Actually, he hired the Dixie Flyer Band to play at his 50th wedding party 2 years ago. All of these classmates are in this picture, except Donna, that went to Diamond School and Oakwood High School. The rest of us went to South Mount Pleasant Grade School. There were only 4 of us that started together in the first grade: Johnny Hendrickson, Mary Edwards, Dennis Bartlett, and me. We went all the way through school together and graduated together from Danville High School in 1964. Mary is the only one that lives out of the Danville area today. There are many of us that went to this grade school and continued to live in the Danville area. We will see each other around town, and when we can, we stop and talk of old times. That is good. Maybe I should give you an idea of this grade school. Originally, there was a North Mount Pleasant and a South Mount Pleasant. North Mount Pleasant was about 2 miles away and just off Hungry Hollow Road. By the time I was in school, North Mount was closed and taken down. South Mount was on Polk Street, just a half block from our house. I would go out the backyard, down the alley, and across the street to school. The schoolhouse was a square brick building with one room on the main floor and a room in the lower level, or basement. When I started school, the 1st through 4th grades were in the lower level and the 5th through 8th were upstairs. There was one teacher upstairs, Mrs. Russell, and one teacher downstairs, Mrs. Wright. The restroom were outhouses out behind the school. There was one 2-hole outhouse on one side for the boys and the same on the other side for the girls. The heating system was a coal-burning furnace located in the lower level. Different students were assigned duties to stoke the furnace with coal, usually the ones who were in trouble for one reason or another. There was a playground on one side that had a swing set with a slide on one end. Then there were two teeter-totters and about an 8 feet diameter merry-go-round. Behind the school was a grass field where we played unorganized baseball and football at recess. I don't recall having any organized sports or competition with other schools. Somehow we managed to get through the grades, get our report cards to take home, and graduate to high school. What an amazing job by the teachers. There was one neighborhood boy who never became a classmate. His name was Billy Grimes. Billy lived with his grandparents a block west of my street on Western Avenue. Their house was next to the colored section. We called them this term at that time. Billy was my age, but he had a disability, probably a mental handicap. That didn't bother me because I wanted to be his friend. My mother knew about his problem too, but she wanted us to be friends. There were a few times when Billy came to my house to play. We really enjoyed playing in the yard together. He was pretty frail, and when he smiled, you could see his crooked and already decaying teeth. I always felt so sorry for him. The saddest thing I remember is that day we went past his house and saw him in the yard. He had a dog collar around his neck and was chained to a tree. He would sit there and bark like a dog. These memories of him haunt me to this day. He was so mistreated because of his handicap. He never attended school like the rest of us. The last thing I remember about Billy Grimes is that he was put into the children's home. I wish my parents would have taken me there to see him. They probably didn't want me to know, because it never was a good thing to go there. There isn't a week that goes by that I don't think about what may have happened to Billy. Maybe someday I can write a song about whatever happened to Billy Grimes.